यू शेयर अपने अपडेट काम नहीं कर रहा है, जो पहले अपडेट के पहले हो रहा था वही प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है। It was working on this phone?
हाँ working है।
How did you update it at that time?
इसका ना कोड जनरेट होता है, वो कोड को इसके थ्रू स्कैन किया था मैं। स्कैन कोड जब आता है ना, कनेक्ट तो कर रहा है, ऐसे कर रहा है।
सुनो, पहले भी यहाँ पे जा रहा था वो। Actually you press this, that's when it goes out. ठीक है, on this side, do the updating once again. कितना टाइम लगेगा करने को?
मुश्किल है एक्चुअली वो ना, इट्स नॉट दैट सिंपल। उसके लिए ऐप इंस्टॉल होती है, अनइंस्टॉल होती है, ऐप अनइंस्टॉल इंस्टॉल होता है।
मैं ट्रांसलेशन पर कोड पढ़ता हूँ तब तक आप ये कर दो। मेरा फोल्ड फ़ोन भी नहीं लाया हमने।
नहीं है ना, वो तो था
फोल्ड फ़ोन
वही तो दिखा रहे थे वो।
Have they written the verse? So they have not written the verse today. Okay, we can start reading the translation purport. बोर्ड को लेके आ जाओगे? प्रभु जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य स्तोत्र श्री श्रीमद हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस अभय चरणारविंद भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी श्री प्रभुपाद की अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की हिताय गौर प्रेमानंदे। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम कैंटो 7 chapter 10 text end. Get the verse here. Om namo bhagavate tubhyam purushaya mahatmane haraye adbhuta simhaya brahmane paramatmane। ओम नमो भगवते तुभ्यं पुरुषाय महात्मने हरये अद्भुत सिंहाय ब्रह्मणे परमात्मने। ओम नमो भगवते तुभ्यं पुरुषाय महात्मने हरये अद्भुत सिंहाय ब्रह्मणे परमात्मने पुरुषाय महात्मने इसका बाजू को जाओ ना, उनको डिसाइड करना है, आप बाजू को जाइए। O my Lord, Supreme Personality of Godhead, Namaha, I offer my respectful obeisances. Namaha, Bhagavate, unto the Supreme Person. Tubhyam, unto you. Purushaya, unto the Supreme Lord. Mahatmane, unto the Supreme Soul or the Super Soul. Hare, unto the Lord who vanquishes all the miseries of devotees. Adbhuta Simhaya, unto your wonderful lion-like form as Narsimha Dev. Brahmane, unto the Supreme Brahman. Paramatmane, unto the Supreme Soul. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta, Swami Śrīmad Prabhupada. O my Lord, full of six opulences, O Supreme Person, O Super Soul, killer of all miseries, O Supreme Person in the form of a wonderful lion and man, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Purport. In the previous verse, Prahlad Maharaj has explained that a devotee can achieve the platform of Bhagavatva, being as good as the Supreme Person. But this does not mean that the devotee loses his position as servant. A pure servant of the Lord, although as opulent as the Lord, is still meant to offer respectful obeisances unto the Lord in service. Prahlad Maharaj was engaged in pacifying the Lord, and therefore he did not consider himself equal to the Lord. He defined his position as servant and offered respectful obeisances unto the Lord. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanishalaakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhaktivedanta Swami iti namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So today morning we are coming to the conclusion of the second set of prayers of Prahlad Maharaj. And here he is concluding with more or less a obeisance. And while offering obeisances, he is actually describing how he sees the Lord before him as the ultimate absolute reality. Om Namo Bhagavate Tubhyam, you are Bhagavan. Unto you I offer my obeisances. But then also he is saying, Purushaya Mahatmane. So actually in this verse, if we go into the 6 systems of philosophy that are there in the Indian tradition, Purusha is actually the ultimate reality within Sankhya. In Sankhya, it's one of the 6 systems of philosophy where Purusha and Prakriti are considered 2 main components of reality. So basically what Prahlad is doing over here is that whatever is the ultimate conception of reality in various prevailing schools of thought, he is asserting that you are that ultimate reality. So Purushaya Mahatmane. Now Mahatma is at one level a generic reference to any great person. But Mahatma, the Atma is Anu. The Atma is tiny. So the Atma can actually never be Mahatma. The Atma is always 1/10,000 the tip of a hair. The only Mahatma is the Supreme Lord. So now of course the Jivatma is sometimes considered to be Mahatma when the Jivatma becomes devoted to the Mahatma. So when Krishna manifests through a Jiva, then that Jiva can also be called a Mahatma. But the Jiva is always constitutionally an Anuatma. But when he uses the word Mahatma, basically this is apart from the simply being a glorification, it's also an assertion of personalism. Because within the impersonalist idea, there's only Brahman. Both the Anuatma and the Mahatma, the Jiva and the Bhagavan, both are illusion. So, Mahatmane. So he's asserting again that you are the supreme reality. Haraye Adbhuta Simhaya. So he's acknowledging the special form in which that Lord has appeared. And the Lord appears to remove distresses. So he has appeared to remove the distress of Prahlad in the form of the torments that he suffered at the hands of Hiranyakashipu. And then he says, Brahmane Paramatmane. So Brahman, sometimes within our tradition, we consider Brahman to be the impersonal effulgence of the Lord. And while that is true, but that particular nomenclature is only within the Gaudiya tradition. The word Brahman is a generic reference to the ultimate reality, however it might be conceived. For example, right in the start of the Vedanta Sutra, it begins with Athato Brahma Jigyasa. Now when the word Brahma is used, it is not to refer to now inquire about impersonal Brahman. It is saying just inquire about the ultimate reality. And that can be seen immediately from the next verse. That is Janma, that is Janmadya Asyataha. So that ultimate reality is the source of everything. So that is a reference to that Brahman is not just impersonal, it is the ultimate reality. And then Paramatmane. So Paramatmane refers to that with the yogis, they consider the Paramatma to be the ultimate reality. And that is the object of meditation for them. So in this way, whatever be the various paths a person might be following, the ultimate reality, however it is conceived, you are that ultimate reality. He is asserting his confidence. There is no reality beyond you. There is no reality bigger than you. There is no reality other than you. So, nothing bigger than you, nothing beyond you, nothing other than you. That is the idea of a complete conviction about enlightenment. Mattaha parataram nanyad kinchid asti dhananjaya. There is nothing beyond Krishna, nothing bigger than Krishna, nothing other than Krishna. So, see, within the evolution of God, or evolution of the conception of God, this is a hierarchy which is used by Advaitins, but it is not only their conception. They say you start with, there is no God. Then you move towards, there are many gods. There are gods, but there are many gods. Then you move towards, there is one God. And then finally you realize that there is only God. There is nothing existing beyond God. But now the way they interpret this is to say is that the only God means there's only Brahman existing everywhere. There's nothing existing. And in that way they try to position that whatever be your idea of religion, it all culminates in our idea of religion. That ultimately there's only God. There's nothing beyond God. Now this is true. But aham eva sam eva gre, in the Bhagavatam, in the Chaturshloki it says, I alone exist. Now Jiva Goswami, in his explanation of this verse, he states that when Krishna uses the word aham, he is using it sometimes to refer to himself as a person in contradistinction to everything else. Like Krishna says that I am here and the whole world is here. But sometimes when Krishna uses the word I, he is referring to all of existence. So for example, when Krishna using the word aham sarvasya prabhu, I am the source of everything, he is saying. Now, he is referring to himself as a person. But if that's all there is, see, God is personal, but God is not a person like us. He is what you can say transpersonal. It's a transcendental person. That means Krishna is here and Krishna is saying, I am the source of everything. What that means is that Krishna does not exist separate from everything. Rather, everything is included within Krishna. Natadasti vina yatsyan maya bhutam characharam. That nothing can exist without me. So within our philosophy also, the idea is that God is everything. God is there is only God that exists. But God is not a homogenized reality. Within God, there is Bhagavan, there is Jiva, there is Prakriti. That is what Srila Prabhupada says in the introduction of Nectar of Devotion, where he says Krishna includes his expansions, his energies. So when we say Krishna is God, at one level it's a simple statement, at another level it's a philosophically sophisticated statement. So that is what is being indicated over here. Now, if this sounds too confusing, we are not going to discuss this today. We can discuss this some other time. But I would like to focus on this one word over here, Hare. Hare Adbhuta Simhaya. So Hare, it comes from the word Hari, and Haran. Haraye means to steal away. And what does the Lord do? He steals away the distress of a devotee. Now, specifically, if we look in the context of this series of prayers. Now, we talk about distress in various terms. We talk about distress in terms of the four miseries of material existence, Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. We can talk about distress in terms of the Trivid Tapa, Adhyatmik, Adi Bhautik, Adi Daivik. At the same time, the root cause of distress is not this. If there's a disease, the fourfold misery, the four kinds of miseries, the three categories of miseries, all these are the symptoms of the disease. The misery is primarily because of avidya kama karma bhi. Kunti Maharani says that it is because of avidya which leads to kama. Kama means it's material desire, but the way Prabhupada uses the word material desire is it's desire independent of Krishna. So, the desire to enjoy the pleasures of the world independent of Krishna. So, today we will try to discuss how the Lord does Haraye. Haraye is how the Lord helps us become free from distress. Okay. So, today I am experiencing some tech distress. So, is this chargeable somewhere? Okay, leave it. We'll finish it. So, I'll talk about three broad things. When we have worldly desires, how do we deal with those desires? We can say bhakti purifies us of the desires. But then we also say we have to purify ourselves. So, when these desires are there, exactly how purification happens is to some extent a mystery. It means that one day a desire is troubling us a lot, and suddenly the next day the desire disappears. And sometimes the desire disappears to come back again after a few days. Sometimes the desire just disappears. Say we might have been eating meat before, and we started practicing bhakti, and the desire for meat just disappeared. So, when we talk about purification, it can at one level refer to we resolving, I will not indulge in this. And that's definitely required from our side. But from Krishna's side, at one time it will happen that the desire itself will disappear. The proposition from inside will stop coming. See, when we say desires come upon us, desires arise from two sources. One is external, that is we see some object, and the other is internal. Internal is some samskar is triggered and we feel the urge from within. I want to eat this, I want to touch this, I want to enjoy this. So now, the external cannot be stopped. We cannot change the world so that it will be free from all temptation. But what Krishna says in 270 in the Bhagavad Gita, that external desires may come in, but our consciousness can become like an ocean. Then the river is coming in the ocean, don't disturb. So now, how does our consciousness become like an ocean? At one level, there's nothing we can do to expand our consciousness. We can strive, but that expansion happens by Krishna's mercy. And at a particular time, we'll find the desires will just disappear. Now, till that happens, we all can pray that happens as quickly as possible. But till that happens, so external will remain, even if a person, external in the sense of the tempting objects will remain. But the internal can disappear by Krishna's mercy. But today what we are going to discuss primarily is, till that happens, what are we going to do? Till that happens, how are we going to function? So we'll talk about, when we are practicing bhakti, we can deal with it in three different ways, broadly. We work on our material desires. Work on our desires means we try to purify them. We protect ourselves from the triggers. We pray to Krishna. We do some focused chanting. We do some focused sadhana. The second is we work with our material desires. Okay, I have this desire. I can't give it up. It is a part of me right now. I'll work with it. I'll explain these three categories elaborately, but these three categories will be the sum of our class today. And then we work for our desires, but within limited boundaries, within certain boundaries. So the point is that when we hear about pure devotees and how they are free completely from all worldly desires, that can sometimes be inspiring and that can sometimes be discouraging. Because it's inspiring that somebody can be free from all desire other than the desire to serve Krishna. But at the same time, it may be discouraging because we may have so many other desires. And we can't artificially reject the desires. By artificial reject means the desire is present within us. We can say no to it. But sometimes saying no, it just gives us a sense of determination and we feel, yes, this is finished. But sometimes saying no, it just creates a sense of suffocation. And how long can I keep saying no? So that can become very difficult to manage. So we look that there's not just one strategy within the tradition for dealing with worldly desires. There are multiple strategies. So the most common that we talk about is work on our desires. Work on means that we try to deal with that particular anartha. If somebody has a lot of greed, then a lot of craving for possessions, for wealth, then we may read particular sections of the Bhagavatam. Maybe we can read about the Avanti Brahmana, we can read about the where a person had a lot of wealth and suddenly lost everything. Where wealth lay, we can read about Bali Maharaj. So the Acharyas have described that for different anarthas, different pastimes can be helpful. Now it's not necessarily that pastime alone will be helpful. We have to find out what works for us. But we can work specifically on those desires. When we work on those desires, what does this mean? So when we work on a particular desire, basically for us, we create boundaries for ourselves. That this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm not going to do. We try to avoid the triggers which will inflame us. So generally the desires are there within us and from there they pop up. We can't stop how they will pop up from within. But at least we can stop giving external triggers for them as much as possible. And then secondly, when we read the scripture, there is warnings. When a desire comes up, one of the things, the final stage before the desire catches us is buddhinashat pranashyati. It destroys our perception of the consequence of indulgence in that desire. So when we read pastimes which remind us about how worldly desires can be entangling, then that can help us. And then of course, the most fundamental principle in bhakti is we filling our consciousness with Krishna. We can't empty our consciousness, we fill our consciousness. So that way, what happens is, if we are, Prabhupada one time said that, I have no lust. And he said, I have no time for lust. What he meant is that, so many things to do, so many services to do, I have no time for selfish desires. So, the desire may pop up inside us also. But if we are busy, then the desire doesn't get any space to grow. Now, this way we work on our desires. And sometimes when we work on our desires in this way, we can just, over a period of time, they will decline and disappear. We can get rid of them. However, this may not work always for all desires. And if it doesn't work, that is not a deficiency of bhakti, and that is not even a deficiency of the bhakta. That is just the kind of conditioning that a person has. We don't have to feel guilty And we don't have to lose faith. This is what happens. So sometimes a treatment is given and the treatment doesn't work. The patient may think, oh, this doctor is itself terrible. Doctor doesn't work. Or I am incurable. No, it may be neither. Maybe there are some complications over there. Maybe the disease is much more deep-rooted. So there are always multiple prongs of treatment available. Just because we are not able to deal with a desire, that means the desire is not getting purified. That doesn't mean that we have to go to either of these extremes. One is lose faith in Bhakti and Krishna, and the other is condemn ourselves. By condemn ourselves means that, see, even the Acharyas sometimes seem to be condemning themselves. Amara Jivan Sada Paperat. But that condemnation is actually drawing them closer to Krishna. For us, when we condemn ourselves, we just say, I'm hopeless, I'm useless, and we just quit. So, this condemning ourselves, if it's leading us to quitting, then that is unhealthy. We don't want to do that. So then what is the alternative? If, for example, within the tradition itself, there is the Nishtika brahmacharis, there are Upakurvan brahmacharis. So the idea is, it's not that the Upakurvan brahmacharis are supposed to live lifelong with guilt. That, oh, I could not control and purify my desires. I could not get rid of them. Nothing like that. Throughout history, most people, even in Vedic times, have been grahasthas. Even the sages, most of the sages we see are grahasthas. So there is no need to think that if somebody is not able to, just by hearing, purify themselves of desires, that makes them a lesser devotee. That just means there's a different path for them to grow. And that which was exceptional even in previous ages, we cannot make that the standard in this age. That means, what is the standard? That you just hear and renounce all desires. That was exceptional even in Satyuga. That was so if it's exceptional in Satyuga, then it's going to be much more exceptional in this age. So we need to be kind to ourselves. Worldly desires take some time and effort to overcome. And the first method is not the only method. Sometimes in a war, some warriors are like single weapon warriors. You know, some armies are just single strategy armies. You know, this is the only weapon I fight with. Somebody fights only with bows and arrows. If the opposite party has an armor by which bows and arrows are not being pierced, then what does it do? You can't do anything. You're helpless. We have only one strategy. See the army, just rush into the army and destroy them. Well, what if they're attacking from different sources? So we need to have multiple strategies. So it's like there's a plan A and there's a plan B. This doesn't work. So within the scriptural tradition itself, there are multiple plans that are given. So first is we work on our worldly desires and we try to purify ourselves of them. But if that doesn't happen, then we work with our desires. With means, yes, this is a part of who I am. And at such times, when we have material desires, see, everything in this world can be seen from two distinct perspectives. One is a moral perspective, the other is a functional or a mechanical perspective. What do I mean that? Moral perspective means, oh, I have this desire, therefore I'm a weak devotee, I'm a fallen person. I'm useless. Now, have any of you heard of this statement? So now what happens is, when we make this statement, we make this part fallen so big that we forget the soul part. And I am fallen. Well, bhakti means sarvopadi vinirmuktam, to become free from all designations. And fallen is also a temporary designation. Just like to think I am a man, I am a woman, I am an Indian, I am American, I am young, I am old. These are designations. These are temporary. So fallen is also a temporary designation. So just as identifying too much with our physical beauty or lack of beauty, with our just as over-identifying with any identity other than the fact that we are souls or parts of Krishna is a problem. Similarly, over-identifying with our fallen state is also a problem. So, if we identify more with the fallen part than the soul part, then we may be thinking that I am having humility. But we are not having humility, we are having self-pity. And self-pity is a form of Maya. Because it is completely self-centered. Oh, I am so fallen, I am so fallen, I am so fallen, I am so fallen. Okay, you are fallen, but what next? Okay, how can you serve Krishna? I am so fallen. Okay, you are fallen, but how can we serve Krishna? It is not that just because I am fallen, I stop being a servant of Krishna. Krishna is so inclusive that even in my fallen state I can serve Him. And that needs to be accepted. So, we don't over-identify with our fallen state. Okay, I have a particular desire. I can't give it up. Fine. Work with that desire. So, now we want to look for examples of, say, working on our desires. There are examples, say, of a Yayati. He indulged and then he just renounced the world. We have, now with respect to Yayati, it is described that there's a very interesting phrase that is used over there. It is said that when Yayati got the realization, he renounced the world like a bird who has developed wings and flies away. So now, it is not that the bird does something special. Okay, wings come out, wings come out, wings come out, wings come out. No, the bird is trying, maybe flapping its wing, trying. And one day the wings are there and the bird flies away. So, the bird's trying is important. But the bird's trying is not going to accelerate the growth of wings. When the wings come, then the flight becomes natural. So for all of us, we want the wings to come so that we can fly in the sky of service without being pulled down by the gravity of our worldly desires. And we can keep serving more and more and more. But that will happen in its own way. That will happen by Krishna's mercy at a particular time. What is that time? We can't predict that. And one aspect of being surrendered is to accept the condition we are in and to serve Krishna in that condition. So that's what our Krishna tells Arjuna, that this war is inevitable. You want to serve me? The way you have to serve is accept that this war is going to happen and see how you can serve me within this war situation. So like that, okay, for us, maybe our lived realities, we have to fight, we have to live with our desires. So when we work with means, we have a desire, we make arrangement for fulfilling that desire. But our focus is not on fulfilling that desire. Our focus is on serving Krishna. So the example for this is Kardam Muni. Now it is said Kardam Muni performed such austerities that the Lord himself appeared in front of him. But after the Lord appeared in front of him, Kardam Muni, he desired to have a life partner. Now you may say, if he has already darshan of the Lord, he can perform such austerities that he can have darshan of the Lord. Why does he need a life partner? But that's not seen necessarily as a contamination. Or even if it's seen as a contamination, it's not seen as a wrong thing at all. It is, that's what he needed, that's what the Lord provided him. So we work with our desires. Okay, this is a desire I have. Now he did not perform austerity to pray to the Lord for a partner. That was not the point over there. So in that sense, Kardam Muni is different from, say, Pururava. Pururava, the whole purpose of performing yajna and doing austerity was so that he could get Urvashi. Kardam Muni is not at all like that. Kardam Muni didn't have any specific desire for a specific partner. The Lord arranged for him. he got Devahuti. But the point is, somebody has certain desires. You can work with those desires. So, okay, this is the level of this is what I need. Now we say, okay, all our desires are wants; they are not needs. Okay, but in the conditioned stage, they feel like needs for us, and without them, it becomes very difficult to function. So when I said see this as mechanical, what it means is, okay, it's just a part of our functioning. Suppose somebody has back pain, then they can't lift big boxes. That's a limitation, but they don't have to go into a moral inferiority complex because of that. Oh, I can't do this service. Okay, you can't do this service, there are so many other services you can do. Stop feeling sorry for yourself and start doing some service. So, for example, somebody may require a certain level of comfort. Okay, I want a house like this, I want a car like this, I want this much space for my service. Now, is this a material desire? Well, it may be, it may not be. But the point is, if that's what gives us peace of mind, okay, I want this much level of comfort. If I have this much level of comfort, I can serve Krishna nicely. Okay, then have that level of comfort and serve Krishna. So that's why when Krishna uses the word yukta ahara viharasya, Krishna does not attach any quantity to what is yukta. Not too much food, not too little food. Not too much sleep, not too little sleep. Now what is too much food and what is too little food? Well, that will depend on person to person. In the Bhakti tradition, we have Raghunath Goswami and we have Bhima. So both are considered devotees. Now, for both of them, what is yukta ahar is very different, isn't it? So the point is not how much you eat. The point is, what do you do after eating? Isn't it? How do we serve Krishna after eating? So some devotees might live with very simple food. Some devotees might want some good food to eat. That doesn't matter. We work with those desires. See, sometimes we take examples beyond their context. So, for example, we say if you scratch an itch, then it will worsen. If we have a rash, we scratch an itch, we scratch it, it will worsen. It will worsen. It will worsen to the point that it will become unbearable. Well, that is true when there is already a rash in the skin. Now, if says, I'm giving a class and I get the Prabhu is scratching his head. Now, I get to scratch my nose. Maybe it's not the most pleasant thing to do in a public place. But it's not that if I scratch my nose once, for the rest of the time I'm going to scratch my nose for the rest of my life. No, that's a urge which comes, it goes. If there is a disease already there, if there's a rash already there, that's when that's going to create a problem. Otherwise, scratching itself is not the problem. It's like, say, suppose somebody, one day they have a desire to eat a halwa. Now, okay, you eat the halwa, is it that for eat halwa once, after that, 24 hours for the rest of your life constantly gulping down halwa? No, it's not going to happen, isn't it? Now, so there are many desires, they may be distractions from bhakti. But sometimes trying to fight against that desire is a greater distraction than within boundaries indulging in that desire. So, say for example, somebody wants to chant and they're feeling very hot. Say, okay, I want to sit under a fan and chant. No, chanting is tapasya, I should do some tapasya. And then you sit and you're feeling very hot and feeling uncomfortable and you're trying to chant. Now, we may be chanting, but we are thinking about how uncomfortable we are feeling. And we are not Krishna conscious, we are just physical discomfort, physical pain conscious. Well, forget it. Okay, turn on a fan and sit down and focus on Krishna. Isn't it? Is it that because we sit under a fan, for the rest of our life, we are going to become a fanatic? Somebody who can't live without a fan. Well, not necessarily. So, not every material desire is lethal for bhakti. And there are many desires which we can just say that these are people's preferences. Okay, this is the way they function. And create the space within bhakti for that and continue our bhakti. So we work with our desires. Work with our desires means, this desire needs a particular space, and I engage in this desire and then start practicing bhakti. So I know one devotee who was a lot into physical training before. And now he's still very fit, but he said that I don't want to spend any time on physical training. And he said that when I sit down to hear Bhagavatam, or study, not here, read Bhagavatam, he said I used to read 1 hour every day, but throughout I just feel sleepy. So then, he said one day I just tried 10 minutes before studying Bhagavatam, I did a vigorous physical workout, just jogging or doing some exercise. And after that, for the next 50 minutes, I found I was so fresh. So now he's been practicing bhakti for 15-20 years. Now he knows what is anukul for his bhakti. Now there's nothing, first of all, there's nothing wrong in doing physical exercise, if that's what is required for health. But apart from health, if that increases mental alertness, and that enables us to remember Krishna better, then okay, 10 minutes of doing some physical workout, you're doing 50 minutes, maybe those 10 minutes we could have read Bhagavatam. But we might not be reading Bhagavatam, we might be sleeping while reading Bhagavatam. So, rather than focusing only on numbers, we focus on quality. So sometimes, as I said, some worldly desires, I don't even like the word desires in the sense over it. There are desires, but they are not toxic, they are not lethal. Okay, there is some, you work with that desire. Don't make that desire bigger than it needs to be, but don't try to make it smaller than it can be. It is there, give it some space and move on with life. See, because what happens is sometimes when nothing is open for negotiation, then everything becomes open for rebellion. See, if somebody feels that there's some authority figure, and then the authority, 90% of their expectations are reasonable, but maybe 10% are somewhat too much for a subordinate. Now, if the authority is open for 10% negotiation, then the subordinate is actually grateful for the other 90% and works with that. But if the 10% is also not open for negotiation, then resentment piles up. And then when there is rebellion, that rebellion is not just against the 10%, that rebellion goes against the entire 100%. So much of what was good also gets rejected. So sometimes we have to learn to negotiate with ourselves. That sometimes we think that bhakti or self-mastery means making our mind and senses our slaves. But Krishna never uses that word. Krishna says the mind has to become your friend. So friend is very different from a slave. Now of course, we don't want to be a slave of our mind and senses. That is true. So we don't want to be a slave of our mind and senses, but we are also not meant to make our mind and senses our slave. We are meant to make our mind and senses our friend. Now, mind specifically, but senses also, because we have to work with those mind and senses. There are tools for working. So what does this mean? With a friend, now if a friend is wanting us to do something which is very harmful for us, we won't do that. But a friend is not the same as a slave at all. So why does Krishna use the word make your mind your friend, not your slave? That means there has to be some level of negotiation, some level of discussion. So some desires, we work with them. And that doesn't affect our bhakti much. We work with it, we keep continuing our bhakti. Okay, that particular desire comes, deal with it and move on. Don't make it bigger than it needs to be. And that brings us to the last part. That is, sometimes we work for our desires. Some desires may be so strong that we may have no peace of mind till that particular desire is fulfilled. So for example, Dhruva was told by Narad Muni, why do you bother about a kingdom? Just go back home. Narad Muni told him two things. He says, you are just a small child, and children don't take childhood spats so seriously. Sometimes two kids, they are friends, and then they maybe have some small quarrel, and in India they say, Katti. I will not talk with you again. And then maybe after 3-4 days, they're just chatting as if, what happened? He says, oh, we are BFF, the best friend forever, isn't it? So, kids don't take quarrels very seriously. So, you're just a kid, go back home, don't take all this so seriously. And then Narad Muni says, if you think you are not a kid, if you think you are mature, then those who are really evolved, they don't take honor and dishonor very seriously. These things keep coming and going. So don't take it seriously. And now, what does Dhruva say? He says, your words are true, but they find no place in my heart. They find no place in my heart. Please give me an instruction that works for me. So his desire was so strong at that time, he just couldn't think of anything else. So what did he do? He worked for his material desires. But he worked within the ambit of bhakti. That means he practiced bhakti intensely. Now, was his practice of bhakti materially motivated? Yes, it was. But it was the practice of bhakti. And that's why the Bhagavatam has akamaha sarvakamava moksha kama udarati. So the focus is, the Bhagavatam says, not what is the level of your material desires. The focus is, what is the level of your bhakti? Tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. So sometimes we focus too much on decreasing the level of our worldly desires. But instead of that, we encourage ourselves or others to just increase the level of our bhakti. Now we may say the two are mutually exclusive. That if we are increasing the level of material desires is high, then the level of our bhakti can't be high. Well, it's not always like that. In some cases it may be, but it doesn't always have to be like that. Some people can follow the rules and regulations of bhakti very diligently because they have a particular desire to fulfill. And that desire is so strong, okay, if this is the means, then let me do this. Now we could say Dhruva's desire at least was not very destructive. Okay, he didn't want that, oh, I'll have a kingdom bigger than my kingdom, and then with the army of that kingdom, I'll go and kill my father and kill my stepmother, and I'll show them. No, it is not a destructive desire. It is a competitive desire. Competition can be destructive, but it doesn't always have to be destructive. In the Bhagavatam, there is also an example of a destructive desire. That is Diti. So, what happens with Diti is that Diti, she hears that actually Indra is going to conspire with Vishnu and is going to kill her sons. So she starts perform. She goes to her husband and says, who is her husband? Kashyap Muni. He says, I want a benediction by which I can kill Indra. He says, what are you asking? Indra is my son. He says, no, I pleased you. You have to give me this benediction. Now, in one sense, Diti's desire is actually worse than even Kaikeyi's desire. Kaikeyi at least didn't want, say, Dashrath, you kill Ram. Or you give me a benediction by which I can kill Ram. But he just wanted Lord Ram to be exiled. Diti wanted Indra to be killed. Now, Kashyap Muni had faith in the power of, purificatory power of bhakti. So he gave her the Pumsavan Vrata to follow. And in the Pumsavan Vrata, as she was doing this, the way things worked out was, Indra got wind of it, so he came and started serving her. And Indra was looking for an opportunity to pursue his own agenda. But through it all, her heart became softened. Just as for Dhruva, by the time he got the kingdom and he came back, by the time he saw the Lord and he came back, his heart had become free from all animosity toward his stepmother. So it's not worth fighting over. So bhakti has the capacity to purify. So basically we have the example of competitive desire in Dhruva, but even destructive desire, that was in Diti, but even that was purified through bhakti. But the key point over here is that they kept practicing bhakti. We can say it was even materially motivated devotion. And even the material was not sattva-guna material, it was rajoguna or tamoguna material. But still it was devotion, it was being practiced. So sometimes when we are conditioned, if we say decrease material desires, that may or may not be possible for someone. But if we say increase the intensity of bhakti, that is often more possible for people. So somebody wants to work for their desires, but they are working for their desires not just by, say, working 16 hours, 18 hours a day. They are working for their desires by practicing bhakti intensely. So the bhakti offers us multiple strategies for dealing with worldly desires. And in fact, when Krishna talks about 12.8 to 12, the hierarchy that is there, again that hierarchy is also, Krishna first says, be absorbed in me. If you can't be absorbed in me, try to fix your mind on me. Now, why might sometimes someone not be absorbed in Krishna? It is because they have so many other desires. And that's why they have to try to focus the mind on Krishna. The mind naturally focuses on other things. Krishna says, that's okay, try to focus the mind on me. If the mind is filled with so much rajoguna that you can't even focus on me, then he says, work for me. That okay, you can't really do sadhana, but you can do some seva. So again, while Krishna does not use specifically the word material desires over here, but the idea is, bhakti is not just monolithic. Bhakti is not just 1 or 0. It's not like digital logic. If you can't do this, get out. It's not like that. There are multiple levels at which bhakti can be practiced. And when we do this, we will find that there are so many people who might otherwise feel that bhakti is impossible to practice. They may start practicing bhakti and they may not become devotees in our standard term of devotees. But they will do service. They will do service in their own way. One of my friends is writing a book on Srila Prabhupada's life before he started ISKCON. It's very difficult to do research now because most of the people have passed away at that time, but he's still trying to do some research and get some reports. So he says one of my biggest realizations is that if the Gaudiya Math had been like ISKCON at that time, almost all the devotees would have considered Prabhupada to be a non-serious devotee. Because how often does he come to the temple? How often does he come to the morning program? So, we all have certain definitions, and by that Prabhupada would have been considered not a serious devotee. So, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur had that vision. He will do everything in his own time. So, we don't have to label devotees just because they are not able to do certain things. Let's be more accepting and accommodating. I'll conclude with one incident which actually made me contemplate all this, and which is one of the main things that made me contemplate all this. So I was in Silicon Valley and I met one person. He is among the top 10 software developers in America right now. Very big person, very wealthy, very influential, very popular. And he is the biggest patron of a Advaitic organization over there. And I visited the website. His name is also Prabhu. He's not a spiritual speaker as such, but he's a patron and supporter. So then he came to meet me. He said, I want to meet you. I was a little surprised. He said, my spiritual journey began with your talk. So he said that he was studying in IIT Kharagpur. And there we have our youth outreach going on. And he came for my program. He heard the talk, he found it very logical. And he said, I started coming to the youth center there. And he said, I loved the philosophy. I liked the philosophy. Everything seemed to make sense. But the practical demands were impossible for me. And that's why I just gave it up. I felt very guilty with myself. Then I decided, I have some spiritual instinct. I want to explore it. So which other spiritual path is good, but it doesn't make so many demands. And then he found this Advaitic path. So then I asked him, what was the demand that you found very difficult? He said, I heard in the class that you should not read any books other than Prabhupada books. He said, since the age of 7, there is not a single week in my life when I have not read 2 books every week. I read 100 books at least every year. And these are not just novels and things like this. I read self-help books, I read biographies, I have wide interests. Now I was told that reading other books is material desires. You have to give up material desires. Now, if we want to read Prabhupada's books, we want to read Shastra. But should a person's desire to read other books become their disqualification for bhakti? Somehow that was portrayed as non-negotiable. If you're a serious devotee, you should not read any other books. Well, different people are different. Some people who are more Brahminical, their life is in reading books. For some people, it takes a lot from their life to read books. Isn't it? So most people are non-Brahminical. No offense to them. So for them, they have limited stamina for reading books. And for them, okay, if you have limited stamina for reading books, instead of reading novels and this and that, read Prabhupada's book, read Shastra. But for somebody whose life is reading books, that's what is the driving, most absorbing thing for them, to tell them, don't read any books other than Prabhupada books. That is intellectual torture for them. And this person didn't have to consider bhakti is impractical for this reason. But somehow, wanting to read books, and most of the books, I say sattvic books. They may not be spiritual, but sattvic books. Why should that desire be made into a non-negotiable stumbling block for someone? There's no need for that. So, sometimes we use material desires and put sattva-guna, rajoguna, tamoguna, everything into one category. Material desires, give it all up. And people think I have to give bhakti up only. No. If our movement is to spread, if our movement is to have an impact in the world, we can't expect everyone to become pure devotees. Yes, Prabhupada said that one moon is better than 1,000 stars, which is true, of course. But sometimes, in trying to get that one moon, we are extinguishing 1,000 stars. No, let the stars also be there, let the moon also be there. Isn't it? So if somebody can aspire for pure devotion and just give up all other things as distractions, wonderful. But if somebody can't, if they have some spark of devotion, give place for that. Prabhupada himself did that. Prabhupada had many of his Western disciples who just gave up everything and dedicated their lives to Krishna. But then when Prabhupada came back to India, he saw Indians were not ready to do that. So Prabhupada created the life membership program, where they were basically contributing something to Krishna's service. They were not ready to commit their life to Krishna's service, but they were contributing. They were giving financial contribution, they were giving some contacts and other support. And that is also valuable. And Prabhupada gave a respectable place for them. So did they have material desires? Well, they didn't have the desires to break the 4 executive principles. That is because the culture was relatively pure. But still, they needed their comforts, they needed their wealth, they needed their social position. And Prabhupada did not say, you give it all up. So Prabhupada accommodated them. So actually Prabhupada was visionary. And we also need to accommodate people at different levels. And some people may stay at one level for their entire life. And that's okay. Somebody may just do some service. They may never become a really serious sadhakas. But they're doing service, that's wonderful. Let them do that service. Somebody may not want to give up one particular desire, but still they can be practicing bhakti. We have in the Chaitanya Charitamrita the example of Pundarik Vidyanidhi. He's a devotee living in opulence. But his opulence did not stop his devotion. And he was accommodated. Not just accommodated, appreciated that way. So bhakti is too complex to be fit into a one-size-fit-all formula. And this is, if you do this, you tick this boxes, only then you are a devotee. If any box is unticked, then you are not a devotee. No, let devotees grow at their pace. Those who want to grow rapidly, wonderful. Those who don't want, those who not feel that that's too much for them, let's accommodate them also. And everybody can keep moving toward Krishna and can keep helping others to move toward Krishna. So I'll summarize what I discussed today. I made 5 different points. I started by talking about, first, how this particular verse is talking about the absolute truth in various aspects. The absolute truth as conceived in the Sankhya, in Yoga, in Sankhya, in Advaita. All these are included in this particular verse, and I focus on the Hare part. How the process of bhakti can help us become free from material desires. I talk about 3 things. We work on our desires. That 3 things over there. We set boundaries for ourselves to function. We read scriptures which give us warnings about the material desires, and then we fill our consciousness with Krishna. But then if that doesn't seem to be working for us, then we work with our desires. So with means, yeah, that desire is there, that's a part of whom I am. Instead of seeing it as a moral deficiency, we see it simply as a mechanical functionality. This is what my mind, body, machine needs right now. Let's have it and move forward. So the scratching in each example, it is true within a particular context. It's not that every scratch is going to make us a compulsive scratcher. So it's not that every desire when indulged is going to become like an insatiable fire. So some desires, we just, like we discussed the example of Kardam Muni, indulge in that and move on with their life. And the last is, we work for our desires. Some people might just need a particular level of achievement in the material world before they can focus on bhakti. So if that is the case, then the example is of Dhruva over here. Dhruva at least had a competitive desire, Diti had a destructive desire. But both were accommodated within bhakti. And the last point we discussed was that when we are practicing bhakti, rather than making it as 1-0, rather than making it everything as non-negotiable, we see that each individual has to make that negotiation. The point is that the mind is not to be made a slave. The mind is to be made a friend. And that means each individual has to take responsibility for deciding how best I can work with my mind. And so if somebody wants to read books, somebody wants to do some workout, somebody wants to do certain things, let's give them space. Somebody wanted material comfort, Prabhupada created life membership program. They can have their material comfort. Krishna may not be their life may not be dedicated to Krishna, but Krishna can be a part of their life, a major part of their life. So, and if we accommodate that way, then both devotees can, many devotees can be a part of the movement, and much more impact can be done on the world. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Is there any 1 or 2 questions before we stop? Yes, please.
Prabhu, you mentioned towards the end about accommodating many various levels of devotees. So from our side, we see when we are meeting or trying to cultivate people, you come to a stage where you have to not give enough time or attention to certain category of people because there are others who need your attention.
Correct.
So, but if you don't do that, then you actually lose them for good in many cases. So how to deal with that, because it's a challenge.
Yeah, my understanding is that yetha mam prapadyante. Depending on how much a person is contributing, we can reciprocate. That is fair enough. So sometimes we give people time, that means we give them the time to grow at their pace. It doesn't mean we have to give them our time. We can give our time to those people who are contributing substantially or reciprocating significantly. Others, whenever they meet, we can spend some time with them. We don't have to go out of our way. Like there are some people, if you call them every week for a program, they feel it's too much. But maybe there's we have some database, and that their birthday is there, their family's birthday is there. And we offer them some wishes, send them some prasad. They are happy, and that's the extent they want Krishna in their life. And they give some contribution, they do some seva for Krishna. Now if that is the level at which they are comfortable, then that's fair enough. So sometimes our giving more time to people is seen by them as an intrusion in their life. So if they don't need, then we don't have to give them more of our time. Now if some people, they have a lot of expectation of time and their reciprocation is very less. Then, as devotees, we are preachers, we are educators. We are not therapists. Isn't it? So if people have mental issues, we cannot become the dumping ground for their mental issues. Now, dumping ground is an impolite word, but we cannot do that. We can tell them that, you have these issues. I'm not a specialist in this field. See, everybody should feel cared for and valued. And in that sense, at a human level, we can be there for people. But if people have complex mental health issues, we can't be expected to take care of that. Chanting and bhakti deals with the mind ultimately. But if somebody's mind has a lot of issues, then some specialist intervention might be required. And when we try to, now we use the word sometimes counselor. Now, as a counselor, we are spiritual counselors. We are not professional counselors. So, if somebody is very needy, then needy or clingy, then we have to create some boundaries over there. These are what needs that I can satisfy. But you may need somebody else to satisfy other needs. Just like if somebody has physical health problems, we don't say that, I'm Ayurvedic doctor, I can give you medicines. So similarly, why should we think that all mental health problems of people we can solve? Somebody has a lot of complex relationship issues. At a basic level, we can try to solve relationship issues for them. We can try to give them some principles. But we can't become a mediator for all the relationship issues for the rest of their lifetime. Isn't it? Unless, of course, we are invested in that particular devotee for a particular reason. So we have to reframe their expectations from us. And once that becomes clear, then they will also accept, okay, then we will find out how much they want to be committed in bhakti. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please. We will come to you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for the wonderful class. Prabhu, you mentioned how we should work on our material desires, and you also mentioned when we pray to Lord Krishna to fulfill our spiritual desires, He immediately fulfills it. But Prabhu, we sometimes see we have spiritual desires and we pray for them, but Lord Krishna doesn't fulfill it immediately. So does that mean we're not praying with the right intention, or does He want to wait and then fulfill it?
Yes. Now, see, prayers are not some backhanded way for us to become God. Isn't it? Just because we pray sincerely doesn't necessarily mean that all our desires will be fulfilled. Now, yesterday there was this World Cup final. So this happened long ago. My spiritual master Radhanath Maharaj was asked this question. There was some India-Pakistan match, and there's one congregation devotee, his child. It was normally, whenever he would come to the temple, he would meet Maharaj, and he was very cheerful, very devoted. This day, this was many years ago when the community was very small. It was maybe 88, 89. So he seemed in a very bad mood on that day. Very silent, very withdrawn, almost sullen. Yes, what happened? So he said that, the mother told, yesterday was this India-Pakistan match, and maybe India-England, some match was there. And he prayed that India win. And India lost. So he says, why did Krishna not fulfill my desire? So Maharaj told him that, there's just a child like you in that country praying just like you. So Krishna fulfilled his desire. So my point is that even if it's now this is the material desire, you can say who wins a cricket match. And you can talk about a spiritual desire also. But the material world is a limited place. And there will always be some limitations in this world. So it's not necessary that even if we have a spiritual desire, it will always be fulfilled. Now Prabhupada certainly had the desire to build the Juhu temple. Prabhupada had the desire to complete translating the Bhagavatam. That's why even when in his last days, Prabhupada disappearance day, we heard that how Prabhupada was translating. So Prabhupada clearly wanted to do the Bhagavatam. But then he ran out of time. And he accepted that. When he came to his near end, he did not say, "Oh Krishna, please let me stay for a few years. Let me complete this Bhagavatam." When he was asked, does he have any desires? He said, "Kuch ichha nahi." So although it was a spiritual desire, Prabhupada was not attached to that spiritual desire more than he was attached to doing Krishna's will. That, yes, I want to do this for you, Krishna, but if that's not your plan for me, I accept it. So our spiritual desires also, our desire is to serve Krishna. And within that fundamental desire or foundational desire to serve Krishna, we can have particular desires. And having those desires itself pleases Krishna, because it shows that we are taking initiative in serving Him. But if the desire is not fulfilled, we accept that, because we are not the controllers. Krishna is the controller. Just having that desire, so we don't have to think that my intention was not pure enough or whatever. We can just accept that Krishna has some other plan for us. And continue our service to Krishna. Maybe some other desire, some other time will be fulfilled. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Last question over here. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Chaitanya Prabhuji. Thank you very much for a nice exposition. I have got a personal question. Some people are too much careful about cleaning, and so much so that they don't get time to even do chanting. So what is your advice for them, please?
Chant while cleaning.
Sometimes that is not possible.
Yeah, it's...
Because you are too tired, and you are not able to sleep. And if you can't sleep, how you can't do chanting in the morning? You can't get up in the morning.
Yeah, it's... See, we all have certain issues. For me, I am a English punctuation fanatic. It's like, I remember one time there was some announcement in Pune temple where I was staying, and an announcement was put big font, and there was a typo in that. And I was sitting and chanting. I just could not focus. It was like torture in my head. The spelling is wrong. And then I told the devotee, "Can you remove that printout, it's wrong." And he said, "Nobody except you is thinking that it is wrong." So I was disturbed that it was wrong, and then I was disturbed that he was not disturbed. So I just went out of the temple hall and walked and chanted at that time. I just couldn't look at it. So we all have things that are intolerable for us. But what can we do? Bhakti means we have to learn some tolerance. So if we can't tolerate it, just move away from there. So I know one devotee, he says that he's a very good pujari when he does dressing. But being a good pujari also makes him a very good or a bad critic of others' pujari work. So every time he says, I take darshan, my mind is cataloging all that is wrong that is done in the dressing. And then it just, darshan does not give me any joy, because I'm seeing everything that is, Krishna's peacock feather is not like this garland is off, this is like this. So I told him, so what is the solution? I asked him. He says, I should dress every day. Well, that is not a solution. He said then I told him, Prabhu, that maybe the best thing you can do is, if for us it's laughing matter, but for us it was not. It was a very big agitation. So I told him, Prabhu, if it's causing this much agitation, then better you get your home deities, you dress them every day, you take darshan of those deities. And be satisfied that you're doing this. He says, now I can dress my deities And when I come to the temple, I take darshan, I don't feel so agitated. So somehow we have to create space for ourselves. So maybe we can decide that somebody who has this, okay, instead of the whole house, this is my part of the house. This I'm going to keep clean according to my standards. And maybe that doesn't take so much time and energy. If everything we try to clean, it becomes difficult. Okay? Thank you. Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Itai Gaur Premanande.
You lost your pen or?
I had 3 pens, all of them got damaged.
Really? See if this works. Or while you're here you can use it. Samsung.
No, what happens is, the Samsung Fold is a particular phone. On this nothing else will work. It requires a fold pen only.
Oh really?
It's a bit messy. So this might work over here. I think this will work on this tab. But the problem is, this tab, its Type-C connector is not working. And because the Type-C connector is not working, so we are not able to connect this with it. This should work over here. Prabhu, ये शशि प्रभु का है ना? ये आपका है? शशि प्रभु had given me one.
Yeah,
He got it
give
back.
it back.